Right, everyone is sending me messages privately. And can someone just try and send a message to everyone just to make sure that that works? There's no. Okay.
There's no everyone. It's just private. It's just you, Saad, and Zakaria.
Why is that? Okay, let me have a quick look. Zoom is just, and they've just sent me, I've just seen a notification from Zoom that from the 27th of September, all meetings must have either a waiting room or passcode enabled. So,
do you want to switch off the recording then until this is fixed?
Is it recording now? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. 1 second. Okay, then. So we will begin, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum. Right. Okay, so everybody, this is the final lesson, inshallah, of Madārij al Sālikīn, or covering the section of Rida, Sabr and Rida from Madārij al Sālikīn. We'll speak about how we will continue on Wednesdays after, towards the end of the class, inshallah. We don't actually have that much to cover. Okay, we don't actually have that much to cover. So we'll probably finish in about an hour, and then we'll just open up the floor for questions, inshallah. Just a couple of things to remember in today's class. This is not a webinar, this is a Zoom meeting. So we're using the meeting function, not the webinar function. That's one issue. Secondly, because it's a meeting, just be careful not to enable your videos. Otherwise everyone will see you, okay? Unless you want people to see you, right? But otherwise, just make sure that you don't enable your videos. I will mute everyone as well, just in case. I think that's already actually enabled, I think. Yeah, they seem to have taken away that option, looks like. One second. Yeah, everyone is muted automatically anyway, so, okay.
No, we're not.
Right, okay. Okay. And, right, can you see other participants' names as well, everybody? Yeah, you can. Okay. Right, okay. That's fine. Okay, so this is the final section from the chapter of Rida from Madārij al Sālikīn. And so we'll start reading, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qala al-Musannif rahimahullah. Faslun. Qala ad-daraja al-Thalitha. So the third level. Now, in order to understand what he means by the third level, we have to maybe have a quick recap of the different levels. The way I thought we would just do this is maybe just look at the actual matan itself, the actual text itself. So this is Manāzil al-Sāirīn, if you remember. So Madārij al Sālikīn is a commentary of Manāzil al-Sāirīn by Imam al-Harawi. Someone asked me if I was from Afghanistan. I'm not from Afghanistan, but the author of this text is Manāzil al-Sāirīn. So here he mentions that the three levels. So if you go here, Darajat al-Ula, so the first level of Rida, and this is the lowest level, Rida al-Amma. So he said it's the Rida of lay people. وَهُوَ الرِّضَى بِاللَّهِ رَبًّا. And this is when people are content with Allah as being their Lord. So that was the first general, generic level of Rida. And that's something you'll find that all lay people have. Yeah, that they are pleased with Allah as their Lord. That was the first level, right? And then he mentions the three conditions in order to reach that level. So we already discussed that. Then الدرجة الثانية, the second level of رضا, الرضا عن الله عز وجل, to be pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be pleased with, meaning to be pleased with his decrees. So the first level was to be pleased with Allah generally as your Lord. Then the second level of rida is to be pleased with the things that essentially that he decrees, right? And then we spoke about that in some detail. And then remember he mentioned the three conditions for that. And now we will look at finally at الدرجة الثالثة, الرضا برضا الله. الرضا برضا الله, to be pleased essentially with what pleases Allah. Okay, so الرضا برضا Allah, so to be pleased with what pleases Allah. Okay, or to be pleased with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is content with. فَلَا يَرَى الْعَبْدُ لِنَفْسِهِ سُخْطًا. And so a servant himself, or a servant never sees سُخْطًا, he never sees any discontentment for his own benefit, for his own interests. وَلَا رِضَى. Nor, so basically he has no personal rida, nor does he have any personal discontentment. So his own will, basically, his own personal interests or favors, basically, aren't even held, aren't even taken into consideration. فَيَبْعَثُهُ عَلَى تَرْكِ التَّحَكُّمِ. So this basically, remember to disable your videos, please. So this فَيَبْعَثُهُ عَلى تَرْكِ التَّحَكُّمِ. So this basically pushes the servant to leave tahakkum. And tahakkum here means to essentially be a hakim, to decide matters. So a hakim is a judge. A judge decides what's right and what's wrong. A judge decides whether someone is guilty or innocent, etc. So a tahakkum is deciding. So when a person basically has no personal personal choices for themselves, and they leave everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they leave off tahakkum of essentially judging. وحسم الاختيار. And the second thing that he leaves off is, and hasam means like to sort of cut off and to sever, al-ikhtiyar, a choice. So in life, for example, we all have personal choices, right? We all have personal choices. We prefer certain things. And we believe those things to be better for us. We believe those things to be better for us, right? So when a person reaches this level, which is the highest level of rida, and he leaves matter of personal choices and he leaves it all to Allah, وإسقاط التمييز, and a person completely drops and leaves off tamyiz. And tamyiz is discernment. I mean, in legal terminology, we use the term discernment, right? And in this context, it means discernment as in deciding and for your own self what is really good and what is really bad. So it's quite similar to tark al-tahakkum. وَلَوْ أُدْخِلَ النَّارِ, even to the extent if he was entered into the hellfire. Meaning if he was entered into the hellfire, he wouldn't, I mean, this is purely hypothetical, and actually it's not even really a reality, because if he had that level of rida, he wouldn't be from the inhabitants of the hellfire. So, but just say hypothetically speaking that if Allah was to decide for him to enter into hellfire, he would see that as a just decision, and he would be content with the decision. Obviously, he won't be content with the punishment itself. I mean, no one will be able to bear such a thing, right? But he will be, as a decision and as a decree from Allah, he will have no resistance to that. And again, this is purely hypothetical. I wanted to maybe quickly read some of the footnotes from, as you know, the translation Madārij al Sālikīn. There are some beneficial footnotes. So for those who have the Madārij al Sālikīn, the translation, if you go to page 141, Okay, 141. So, I mean, I'll just read his translation. So he said the third level, so maybe just to go back here. So he said the third level, being pleased with Allah's pleasure, being pleased with Allah's pleasure. So the servant is no longer seeing any personal entitlement to pleasure or displeasure. He sees no personal entitlement to pleasure or displeasure, which motivates him or her to three things. So the first one was tarkut tahakkum, abandon the pursuit of control. Okay, oh, I forgot to mention the footnote, sorry. So if you were to go back to where it says the third level being pleased with Allah's pleasure. So in the footnote it says, for the Shaykh, rahimahullah, the peak of the path is self-annihilation. It's self-annihilation. So as you know, this is in Arabic, the term for that is al-fana. Okay, the Arabic term for that is fana. One second. Leave this here. Where was I? Yes, so for the Shaykh, the peak of the path is self-annihilation. And we said self-annihilation is, in Arabic, the term is fana, which is a term that you find the people of Tasawwuf, they use very frequently. And that's like the goal, where a person completely, essentially, destroys their own ego, and they become in union with Allah's decree or His will. This is obviously not the, we're not talking about the extreme Sufi belief in where we become in unison with Allah Himself. No, meaning where a person essentially destroys their own ego and their lower carnal desires almost, and as a result, whatever they believe, whatever they think, whatever they feel, it falls in line with the will and the decree of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So this is self-annihilation. So that's the peak, right? That's the peak of wayfaring, essentially. So as in the footnote, again, so this is the footnote from Shaykh Hatem al-Hajj's translation of Manazil. So he said, for the Shaykh, the peak of this, the path is self-annihilation. Thus, he considers this rida the ultimate form of rida, whereby the servant has no rida or discontentment, but rather his or her will vanishes into that of Allah's. The sanctioned fana is a complete conformity of one's will to that of his or her Lord. It is important for the baqa, subsistence by Allah with him, for him. So that's just a comment there from Shaykh Hatem al-Hajj. And so going back to these 3 points. So when a person is completely pleased with Allah's pleasure, when a person is completely pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, it leads to 3 things. Abandonment of control, وحسم الاختيار, and to give up choice, وإسقاط التمييز, and to drop all his or her discernments, even if they were led into the fire. So regarding the first point here, على ترك التحكم, Shaykh Hatem al-Hajj mentions this means being content with his or her Lord being in control. One seeks not to control. The second, to give up choice. Here he mentions, since, i.e. the person is, he or she is a mufawwid. Mufawwid is someone who has delegated their affairs to their Lord, the omniscient, the omnipotent, and the all-benevolent. وإسقاط التمييز, in regards to this point, he says, this is not to get rid of the natural perceptions of pain and comfort, but to make all such perceptions irrelevant to their progress, almost unfelt because of their distractions by their ultimate goal upon which their eyes and hearts are fixated. So that's the text of Imam al-Harawi. Now, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah will now, inshallah, comment on that. So he says, إنما كانت هذه الدرجة أعلى مما قبلها. That this level is considered to be higher than the previous level. Okay, and what was the previous level? So we had remember, if you go back to Madārij al Sālikīn, you have the first level, which is which is to be pleased, where lay people are pleased with Allah as their Lord. The second level is where people are pleased with and they are content with the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the second level. So you train yourself essentially to be content with what Allah has decreed. This level, he says, is a higher level. Why? لأنها درجة صاحب الجمع. لأنها درجة صاحب الجمع. Because this level is a level of صاحب الجمع. صاحب الجمع is also a very specific terminology you'll find in books of suluk and tasawwuf. صاحب الجمع is somebody who combines, where their will essentially conforms to the will of Allah. So they've combined. Not the person hasn't combined with Allah, but their will is in conformity with the will of Allah. So this is a person of unison. They are in unison with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of their will. Okay, so whatever basically you you consider to be right or wrong, it conforms with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills and decrees. Al-fani bi rabbihi an nafsihi wa amma minha. This person is al-fani bi rabbihi. He's completely self-annihilated into his Lord, in the sense that, again, he's destroyed his own and removed his own ego, and so he has self-annihilated himself into his Lord. And nafsi wa amma minha. قد غيبه شاهد رضا الله. And the thing that has made essentially his remove his ego is perceiving the contentment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala بالأشياء في وقوعها عن مقتضى مشيئته عن شاهد رضاه فهو فيشهد الرضا لله ومنه حقيقة. And so all this servant sees is everything in the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. So it's not really a matter of, you have your own personal wishes and choices, what you personally like, and then you have, Allah's will and what he decrees. And so you train yourself to basically be content with what Allah has decided. No, you see yourself that your pleasure, your contentment will only come about by seeing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed. So whatever Allah decrees, then surely he is content with that. So you naturally you fall in line with that will of Allah, and that's because you have reached a state of fana, of self-annihilation, and you have completely eradicated your own ego. وَيَرَى نَفْسَهُ فَانِيًا. And he sees himself faniyan. Again, fana. He sees himself to be annihilated. ذَاهِبًا مَفْقُودًا. And his own personal interests and desires, it's all gone. It's basically his soul and his heart yearns solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَهُوَ يَسْتَوْحِشُ مِن نَفْسِهِ. And he even finds himself in a state of alienation from his own self. From his own self. وَمِن صِفَاتِهَا. And from his own characteristics. وَمِن رِضَاهَا. And even from the things that he personally or she might personally find pleasurable. وَسُخْتِهَا. فَهُوَ عَامِلٌ عَلَى التَّغَيُّبِ عَنْ وُجُودِهِ وَعَمَّا مِنْهُ. So he is عامل, working towards essentially التغيب عن وجوده, where he's working towards a state where he becomes absent away from his own existence. مترام إلى العدم المحض. And he is like throwing himself into non-existence. Here we're talking about his ego here. قد تلاشى وجوده ونفسه. And قد تلاشى وجوده ونفسه وصفاتها في وجود مولاه. And so as a result, his own existence and his own ego and the characteristics of his ego, talasha, meaning they just, again, like self-annihilation, they are completely eradicated into the presence of his Lord. كما يتلاشى ضوء السراج الضعيف في جرم الشمس. Just as, imagine you had a siraj, like a lamp, the light from a lamp, الضعيف, a weak light in a lamp. What would that light be in the presence of جرم الشمس, in the presence of the actual sun itself? Jid means actual sphere, the body of the sun, meaning, you know, the light of the sun will completely overpower, will completely. Zakaria, I think there are two people waiting to enter the class. You know, there are, so that might be old, I don't know. I'll just, I think they've joined actually. Yeah, they've joined. Yeah, that must have been an old message, sorry. So yeah, that small light will completely, you know, it will be overpowered by the light of the sun. So that's an analogy to refer to your own ego, your own nafs, and the intent of Allah. Right. So, you know, your own nafs, just you pay no significance to it. Your own ego, you pay no significance to it. فغاب برضا ربه عن رضاه هو عن ربه في أقضيته وأقداره. And so as a result, due to the contentment of his Lord, his own rida disappears. His own rida disappears. وغاب بصفات وجود ربه عن صفاته. And due to the characteristics and the existence of his Lord, then that basically leads to him to the non-existence of his own ego. فتلاشى وجوده وصفاته وأفعاله في جنب وجود ربه صفاته. So that's just a repetition essentially. بحيث صار كالعدم المحض, to the degree that it's as if he becomes non-existent. وفي هذا المقام لا يرى لنفسه رضا ولا سخطا. So in this station, he does not see for himself any رضا or any discontentment. فيوجب له هذا الفناء. So this فناء, this annihilation, it leads to ترك التحكم. Yeah, ترك التحكم, which we said means to abandon control. Yeah, to abandon the pursuit of control. بأمر من الأمور وترك التخير عليه, and to abandon التخير عليه, like to abandon choice. Like you think this is good for you, so you go and pursue it. فتذهب مادة التحكم وتفنى. And so this whole quality of tahakkum, of wanting to be in control of matters, it completely becomes self-annihilated. وتنحسم مادة الاختيار وتتلاشى. And again, the quality of ikhtiyar, of choosing and thinking what is good for you, then again, this disappears. وعند ذلك يسقط تمييز العبد ويتلاشى. And at that point, the discernment of his servant, and again, he doesn't mean the discernment in the legal sense that we study in fiqh. Like before bulugh, before a person reaches puberty, they reach what is called the stage of tamyiz, and that is before a child essentially. It's not a child before a child reaches puberty. They can start they can start to tell the difference between, you know, right and wrong. So I don't know if you hear the trains, but I've put on the noise filter, so hopefully you won't be able to hear the trains as much. Okay. Giving up power. No, a person doesn't give up power. Oh, you can't hear it at all. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, alhamdulillah. Obviously, it reduces the sound quality a bit, but if you can't hear the trains, then that's great. At least you can keep the windows open. Alhamdulillah. So where was I? So if someone asked, it's not, you don't give up power. Here you're giving up your insistence that something is right for you. Your insistence that this shouldn't have happened. Your insistence that this is good for you. Right? So a person essentially goes with the flow and they realize this has been decreed by Allah, and you know, this is God's will, basically. So he says, هذا تقرير كلامه. This is تقرير كلامه. This is essentially an overview of what he said, and this is just to explain the statements of Imam al-Harawi. وبعد فها هنا أمران. So after explaining those, with everything above was basically an explanation of what Imam al-Harawi said. So he said, based upon that, here there are two matters that we need to talk about. أحدها, the first of the two, is أن هذا حال يعرض or يعرض. That this is a state, obviously this is a very, very high state. Now some of you probably, I'm sure, are thinking, surely this is not humanly possible, okay, or that it's so far that it will never attain such a level. So he says هذا حال يعرض لا مقام يطلب. So he said this is a station which يعرض, which basically and this is where I disagree with the translation. So I wanted to see how this was translated. Here he translated this, I'll show you, in this way. He said so here he said, look, now here there are two issues. First, this is a state that should be avoided. Now I don't agree with that. That's not what the author is saying here. Here he's saying يعرض, meaning al-ard is something that appears. All right, it's something that appears, but then it's not stable. Right, it comes and then it might go. So he says, meaning this is not basically a permanent. Sorry, this is not a permanent state. That's what he's trying to say. لا مقام يطلب. So meaning it's not a station that you go after. يشمر إليه, and that you work hard towards. Right, it's not something that you can do. I mean, there's nothing that you can basically do to reach this state. It's something which is gifted to you. Okay. Avoided as in يعرض, حال يعرض. Yeah, no. This is in the context of something which is being عارض. When something is عارض, meaning it comes, okay, but it's not like within your control. Like هذا عارض ممطرنا. Yeah, عارض meaning it's just gonna come. We have no control over it, basically. فإن هذه الحال متى عرضت له وارت عنه تمييزه. So this is a statement, basically, whenever عرضت له, whenever it appears to a servant, meaning whenever a person experiences the state, وارت عنه تمييزه, basically discerning that a person has reached this state, you know, even a person becomes oblivious to it himself. ولا يمكن أن يدوم له ذلك. See, ولا يمكن أن يدوم له ذلك, meaning it's not possible for this state to endure, because it's such a high state. People can't permanently remain upon that station. بل يقصر زمنه ويطول. Rather, the time that the person experiences this state, يقصر ويطول, it can be short and it can be long. ثم يرجع إلى تمييزه وعقله. And then the person will return to his own discernment and to his own intellect, meaning he will return to his own personal discernment of what he believes to be, you know, good and bad and what he prefers in life. Okay, so he's no longer, you know, trying to, where everything aligns with the will of Allah, and that he has no personal interest of his own. Most people will have their own personal interests and their own personal choices in affairs. وصاحب هذه الحال مغلوب. The person of this who reaches this station is maghlub. He will be overpowered by two things. إما سكران بحاله. So he will either be literally in a state of intoxication. Yeah, transient is a good translation for يعرض or for يعرض. So إما سكران بحاله, he will either be intoxicated by his own state, right? وإما فان عن وجوده, or he will basically be in a state of total annihilation from his own existence. وَالْكَمَالُ وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ. Perfection lies just beyond that, basically. That's where perfection lies. وَهُوَ أَنْ يَكُنْ فَنَاؤُهُ عَنْ إِرَادَتِهِ بِإِرَادَةِ رَبِّهِ مِنْهُ. And this is where a person, where his own annihilation, annihilation from his own irada, from his own will, occurs due to the will of his Lord. Right? So everything again falls in line with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَيَكُونُ بَاقِيًا بِوُجُودٍ آخَرٍ. So therefore, he now, since he's in a state of self-annihilation, he's annihilated his own ego. What's the reality of his existence? He's baqin biwujudin akhar. He therefore transcends beyond that into a different type of existence. And this is what in tasawwuf they talk about fana and baqa. So baqa, subsistence, they translate it as subsistence. This is where a person essentially, due to his being self-annihilated, he annihilated his own ego. He is now with Allah. He is now with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the sense that, again, everything that he feels, he breathes, he sees, he perceives, he believes, it's all in line with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. غير وجوده الطبيعي. And so this is, this is not his own natural existence. فهو وجود مطهر كائن بالله. This is a pure existence. His state is of a pure existence. كائن بالله. It comes into being through Allah, walillah, for the sake of Allah, ومع Allah, and he will be with Allah. وصاحب هذا في مقام, and this person is in the station, and this is, and then he quotes a hadith Qudsi, فبي يسمع وبي يبصر وبي يبطش. The hadith Qudsi where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, when a person reaches this station, فبي يسمع, and it's by me that he hears, and it's by me that he sees, وبي يبطش, and it's by me that he strikes. فني عن وجوده الطبيعي النفسي وبقي بهذا الوجود العلوي القدسي. And so again, he's annihilated himself from his own existence, his own natural existence, and now he remains in a heavenly and lofty and sort of holy existence. فيعود عليه تمييزه وفرقانه ورضاه عن ربه تعالى ومقامات إيمانه هذا أكمل وأعلى من فنائه عنها بالسكران. So he said this is of a higher degree essentially than a person who is in a state of intoxication. No, we don't mean here in terms of alcohol, meaning when a person experiences these spiritual experiences that don't persist. This is like sakran bihalihi. Then these are temporal situations, right? They're temporal and they're not as permanent, which is the second level, which he says, where a person annihilates his own ego. فإن قلت, and so if you were to say, هل يمكن وصوله إلى هذا المقام من غير درب الفناء? So if someone was to ask, is it possible for a person to reach this station without treading the path of fana, of annihilation? وعبوره إليه على غير جسره. And is it possible to cross this barrier by using another bridge, right? So here he's saying that, this final level of rida, is it a must that you have to annihilate your own ego? قلت اختلف في ذلك. I say, Ibn Qayyim, اختلف في ذلك. The scholars differ over that. فطائفة ظنت أنه لا يصل إلى البقاء. So there was a group who believed that a person cannot reach baqa. Remember we said we have fana. After the station of fana, you have baqa. This is where you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, everything conforms to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some said you cannot reach that level of baqa وإلى هذا الوجود المطهر إلا بعد عبوره على جسر الفناء. You cannot reach this pure state except after crossing the bridge of fana, meaning you have to annihilate your own ego. فعدوه لازما من لوازم السير إلى الله. And so they considered it laziman. The scholars considered it to be binding and from the necessary things that a person must do to traverse this path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وقال الطائفة, the other group said بل يمكن الوصول إلى الله على غير درب الفناء. Another group said no, it's possible to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this manner without treading the path of fana, of annihilation. وَالْفَنَا عِنْدَهُمْ عَارِضٌ لَا لَازِمٌ. But fana, according to this group, is arid. Okay, now here, you see something in the footnote. Or min awarid al-tariq. Meaning these are things that, they come and go, basically. La lazimun. It's something that you can experience, it can come, but it's not a stipulation. La lazimun. وَسَبَبُهُ, and the cause, therefore, of reaching this level, okay, if self-annihilation is not a prerequisite for reaching this final level of rida, then what is the cause? How does one reach it? He says here, قُوَّةُ الْوَارِدِ وَضَعْفُ الْمَحَلِ وَاسْتِجْلَابُهُ بِطَاعَةِ أَسْبَابِهِ. قُوَّةُ الْوَارِدِ. So قُوَّةُ الْوَارِدِ is a term you'll find scattered in all genres of Islamic literature. But essentially, it refers to quwwatul warid. Something that comes to you is something which is warid, right? So it could be an incident, it could be a ruling, it can be a calamity. It's warid, something that happens. Now, obviously, things that happen to you in life, or experiences that you have, they vary in strength. So due to the strength of the thing that occurs in your life, or due to the strength of the incident itself, وَضَعْفُ الْمَحَلِ, and the weakness of the mahal, the place that the incident affects, which is essentially you. You're the mahal that the thing comes to. So if it's a calamity, if it's, so for example, if it's a really strong calamity, and you are really receptive to that, in the sense that you're very weak, that warid, or that calamity, it's something that really affects you, right? وضعف المحل, and واستجلابه بطاعات أسبابه, and istijlab, where you're trying to seek the causes for attaining this rida, right? So if these three things combine together, right? These three things combined together will help a person reach to reach that state. Quwwatul warid. So when something really pushes you and tests you, tests your resolve, tests your patience, that tests your rida, and you yourself, if you're someone who is very resilient to it and you struggle to deal with it, then it's, you're not going to get very far. But if you yourself see that you are that dependent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you strive to istijlab, where you try to bring about that station of rida by looking for its causes, then you'll be able to reach that state, that third final state of rida, without the need for treading the path of fana. والتحقيق, and maybe we can say in conclusion, or what he believes to be maybe more correct in this matter, أنه لا يصل إلى هذا المقام إلا بعد عبوره على جسر الفناء. This is Ibn Qayyim's view, that it is not possible to reach this station except after crossing the bridge of fana, of annihilation. عن مراده بمراد سيده, by essentially annihilating your own will, your own desire for the will of your master. فما دام لم يحصل له هذا الفناء فلا سبيل له إلى ذلك البقاء. So as long as he doesn't reach this station of fana, there is no way that he can reach this level of baqa, where he is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, when we say with Allah, being baqa here doesn't mean being with Allah in the afterlife, meaning where you're spiritually with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, to that degree. وَأَمَّا فَنَاءُهُ عَنْ وُجُودِهِ, but as for, this is to reach the state of annihilation where he annihilates his own existence as if he doesn't exist, which is a higher level. Okay, which Ibn Qayyim puts into question in other places of his books. فَلَيْسَ بِشَرْطٍ لِذَلِكَ الْبَقَاء. Then that's not a condition in order to reach that level of baqa. So here we can see that there are two levels of fana. Fana'ul murad, where a person annihilates his own will, but he still sees himself as a human being that is upon this earth, that is a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and etc. And then this other level of fana, where a person, it's as if he doesn't exist. All he sees is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said that's not a condition. وَلَا هُوَ مِن لَوَازِمِهِ, and it's not a prerequisite of any sort. The asl of warid is warada, yes. وصاحب هذا المقام, and the person who has reached this level, هو في رضاه عن ربه بربه لا بنفسه. This person, هو في رضاه عن ربه, he is content with his Lord, بربه, by his Lord, لا بنفسه, not by his own account. Right? Not by his own account. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made him to be that level. فَيَرَى ذَلِكَ كُلَّهُ, so he sees all of that, مِنْ عَيْنِ الْمِنَّةِ وَالْفَضْلِ, he sees all of that to be a pure act of grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not something that he has worked for, that he has gained for himself, but in reality, obviously, he would have probably done a number of things to traverse some steps, to reach that level. مستعملا فيه, and he sees himself as being مستعملا فيه, that Allah has basically made him traverse this path. قد أقيم فيه, and this level has been established within him. لا أنه قد قام هو به, it's not that he himself has reached this level of rida, he sees it as pure grace from Allah. فهو واقف بين مشهد, and so he is like witnessing essentially and experiencing what Allah says in the Quran, لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم. Okay, لمن شاء, that that this is that لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم, whoever Allah wills to be upright, they will be upright. Whoever Allah wills to be upright, they will be upright. So he sees that, meaning this is all by the will of Allah. And he's also experiencing and witnessing what Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And whatever you will, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ, whatever you will, nothing of what you will come into effect except by the permission of Allah Rabbul Alameen. Wallahu al-musta'an. And Allah's aid is sought. And alhamdulillah, that completes the section of Rida. Now I've purposefully gone through that section quite quickly, because it's number one, it's I'm sure many of you will be thinking that this is a level which is probably it'll take more than a lifetime to reach such a state, but it's good nonetheless to be aware of these realities and these spiritual stations. Okay, so I'm just gonna open up the floor for questions, inshallah. Let's go back up. There's quite a few here. This is a good way to cover the text. Similar or less. Yeah, if you mean by reading through Madārij al Sālikīn, yeah, so that's a one good way of covering the text. It can save a lot of time as well. So that's potentially, I mean, we were maybe looking at doing Madārij al Sālikīn as a textbook for Tawfiq Online, just Madārij al Sālikīn. Okay, I think I need to PM you about that. He is pleased with his Lord as his Lord is pleased with himself. As his Lord is pleased with himself. With a capital H. No. He is pleased with it. Well, I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Is it the last bit there? The last bit. هو في رضاه عن ربه بربه لا بنفسه. هو في رضاه عن ربه بربه, meaning he has reached the station of rida, basically. He reached this high level of state of rida by his Lord and not by his own account, basically. Let me see how that was translated by one who attains this station is pleased with his Lord, not by virtue of himself, but as a favor and grace. The seeker merely being a tool that is being used rather than the actor who accomplishes it. Yeah, so I think that confirms the way I translated it. Is fana a maqam in the eyes of Ibn Qayyim or a hal? I'll have to double check that. Yeah, I'll have to double check that. How does one reach the baqa state, and what does it really what does it really mean? So baqa is a result of fana. So fana is where a person basically tries to get rid of their own ego, their own base desires. Not to the, what I mean base desires here, I don't mean that person's become like celibate and they just, they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't have any physical relations. No, we're not saying that. Okay. But a person basically doesn't feel so opinionated to believe that this is definitely right for them or this is definitely wrong. Here we're not talking about ahkam shari'iyya, okay, or rights and wrongs in terms of what Allah has already decreed for us, okay, but in terms of incidents and even in terms of rulings. So for example, in terms of rulings, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, the person, if they find any resistance to a hukum of Allah, and this person hasn't reached the state of fana, when a person reaches the state of fana, their nafs will be in sync with the murad of Allah, with the intent of Allah. So like the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. None of you will truly believe until his desires conform with what I have come with, which is one of the final hadith of Imam al-Nawawi's 40 hadith, right? So when a person completely eradicates their own ego and their own nafs and their own inclinations, and their will again falls in line with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's when they have reached baqa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it's so like the hadith Qudsi, so فَبِي يَسْمَعُ, it's by me that he hears, meaning whatever he hears, it's something that pleases Allah, right? Wherever he walks to, whatever he touches, it's everything relating to which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's so far away from anything which will lead to the discontentment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Last week you mentioned about du'as, which left me confused. Will you explain the different types of du'as? Yeah, so this was okay, I'm going to come back to that maybe, inshallah, towards the end, because I want to share some stuff with you, inshallah. What does it mean to leave off judging for yourself, and how is it possible when you would have to assume what Allah's will for you would be in that and choose based off of that? Sorry if that was a badly worded question. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. Basically, a person has to decide, right, what is what is good, what is bad. Here, we're not just talking about deciding what to do. Okay, I mean, firstly, even if it's a matter of deciding what to do, right, you have to decide what's good. And when you decide to do what's good, you're not doing it based upon your own, what you believe to be your own interest. You're doing it based upon what you think falls in line with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. And also in relation to, um, uh, things that happen to you as well. That's another area where rida is required. Okay. At times you won't know what is really good or bad, but that's the whole point. You come to terms with it. You learn to accept it as this is the qadr of Allah. This is what Allah has decreed. Let me live with it. What does someone who worships Allah alone for his glory look like? What's his attitude with regards to ibadah? I mean, what goes through his mind as to why he's doing X, Y, Z ibadah? Is it gratitude that despite his own shortcomings, Allah still allowed him to have iman? This is a big question, because ibadah is multifaceted, right? And you can have numerous intentions behind the ibadah, and each ibadah is different from one ibadah to another. So the state of one's heart when they're praying will be different to when they give zakat, or when they forbid evil, or when they advise somebody, or when they help their parents, right? So ibadah, it's very, as I said, multifaceted. But what does someone who worships Allah alone for his glory look like? What's his attitude with regards to ibadah? So ultimately, people who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that state, their concern, their main concern is, what is the thing that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala see to be the best thing for me to do? Okay, what makes me more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What brings me closer to him? So these are the attitudes and the questions a person of that level would have. And again, that's not to belittle doing things for other reasons, like wanting Jannah or to be saved from the hellfire. Again, we're not belittling that. Although some scholars, did try to make it seem as though they were belittling it. And if you read Ibn Ashur's commentary to Surah Al-Fatiha, he actually has some strong words against people who hold that sort of position. And I kind of concur with him. But all goals are lofty as long as they're, they're valid goals, right? And stated in the Quran and the Sunnah. But some are loftier than others. That's what it is. We won't say anything is less and lonely. Okay, so a person doing an action just to be saved from the hellfire, we won't say that person is a lowly person who has weak iman. That's far from reality. Allahu a'lam. Can we do this class through the matan, but you can give any comment from Madārij, it will be less complicated. See, the purpose of this class, I mean, my intention was never to go through this book from beginning to end. Because that would take years to do that, right? It's a big book. My purpose was to read for an entire section just so that people can understand, as I said, for a number of reasons. Firstly, for people to appreciate, our classical heritage in this science. Number two, to make them realize there's a lot for us to work on spiritually as individuals, because I felt that a lot of the things that were being taught in English were very, very superficial and just sort of scratching the surface. So I wanted to expose people to a deeper level of understanding of these matters, right? So that's why I specifically wanted to read through Madārij and not just through Manāzil al Sālikīn. But if we wanted to, Manāzil al Sālikīn can be taught as a textbook, because look, it's not that big, right? So that's something that I'm definitely thinking about. But obviously, my main focus at the moment, as a teaching manual, for Tawfiq Online is to go through Mukhtasar Minhaj al Qasidin. Okay, and once we more or less have taught most of that, then definitely Manazil al Sa'ilin is probably a matan is something that I would like to maybe to go through, inshallah, from beginning to end. Okay, so in the hadith mentioned about the eye by which he sees and the hand that he strikes, is also mentioned, were he to ask anything of me, does it imply that this person does make dua, or that such a person rarely makes dua? See, this is I'm gonna talk about this because there is a misconception I feel, or maybe this hasn't been clarified properly. Maybe this is my own shortcomings, due to my own shortcomings. But the you know, what is a servant's relationship with rida and dua? Okay, so what does it mean? If a person has rida, does that mean that the person doesn't make dua, right? So if a person with a high level of rida, does he make dua or not? Okay, I'm going to show you something I just sketched yesterday or the day before, and hopefully that will explain it, inshallah. And that will answer the other person's question about relationship between rida and dua. What was mentioned in regards to the weak lamp in comparison to the intensity of the sun? So this is in relation to fana, right? In relation to fana, we said if you have a weak lamp standing in front of the power and then the intensity of the sun, that power and the intensity of the sun is going to obliterate that weak lamp. So we're like the weak lamp, right? Our own ego. So in the presence of Allah, we're just annihilated in that sense. But the person who doesn't see the light of Allah, then they're just going to see their own abysmal lamp, right? Their own weak lamp. So that person hasn't reached annihilation. Have you ever met anyone who lives in this state of fana? Is this some any human being can see in another human? Is it something? I mean, these are internal states that only Allah can see, right? But you can see probably manifestations of those states certain times in other people's actions and their reactions. Okay, in their actions and their reactions. So, what comes to mind is when Fudail ibn Iyad, when his son died, right? He was seen at his janazah, smiling and laughing. Now, although we spoke about that and we said, he's reached a very high level. Maybe this wasn't, this isn't the prophetic model, but that in a way is a sign of fana. Okay, even though if you remember, we spoke about his reaction and how it didn't follow the prophetic model for a number of reasons. Okay, so who is the most pious person you have ever met? I mean, it's difficult to say, but I think a person who has definitely had a huge impact on me. One of my first teachers in Egypt, Sheikh Ahmed al-Nawasara, he was our like a murabbi, right? So he taught us Mukhtasar Minhaj al Qasidin, the bulk of Manhaj al Sālikīn, 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. I studied tajweed with him. I studied tafsir of Juz' Amma with him, and a number of other books we studied with him. He was truly a magnificent murabbi for us. And I always said that if there was like a walking Sahabi, upon this earth, it would probably look like someone like him, basically. So he was truly an inspiration, and I found him to be very God-fearing. And also my Quran teacher as well, Sheikh Ali Abdul Tawwab. He was a man of Quran and very pious, and he's very pious. So he had a huge impact on me. Going back to the questions of relating to dua, I want to share. I was just I'm trying to share this. This might not make much sense in the beginning, but just bear with me. Okay, just excuse my handwriting as well. So types of dua in relation to rida. So what I wanted to do was basically just jot down different types of dua that we make. Now there are many more other types of dua that we make in life, but I just chose these 3 categories here. Okay, so we have du'as that are relating to faith and the afterlife. Okay, so asking for Jannah, asking for to be with Allah, to see Allah, to be protected from the hellfire, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our deeds, all of these types of ad'iyah and dua that we make, for Allah to increase us in guidance, to increase us in knowledge. Now notice here, these type of dua aren't related to rida. Okay, they're not related to rida. Because rida is to do with something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, and the way you respond to that decree, whether it be related to the dunya, whether it be related to the deen. So therefore, a person can have complete rida and the highest degree of rida, but they're engaged in dua relating to faith and the afterlife. You have du'as that are related to tribulations. Okay, related to tribulations. Du'as that are related to tribulation. Now here, this section, so this is, for example, a person has been afflicted by a disease, an illness, and you say, oh Allah, I can't bear this anymore. Please remove this situation that I am in. Okay, take away this tribulation. Remove it from me. Okay, so the person can make this dua and it's absolutely fine. Allah is capable of doing that. If he is the one who put that tribulation there, he can remove it. A person can ask that. But does this person have, if he makes a dua in that manner, will his du'as, will he have rida? The answer is no. He doesn't have rida there. He lacks it. But he's not sinning as a result, because as we said, rida is not compulsory. But there's an area, as you can see here, this shared area, where a person has rida, makes dua relating to a tribulation. So I said here that in this state, a person is content with the tribulation, but may ask Allah to support them in the tribulation. Okay, so if you look at the prophetic du'as, for example, if you look at all the du'as of the prophets, generally speaking, when they were afflicted with tribulations, right, you can see they made du'a to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They remembered Allah, but they were in a state of rida. Like for example, whether it be Yunus, who was swallowed up by the whale, okay, he called upon Allah, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntum min al-zalimin. Notice here, he calls upon Allah, none has the right to be worshipped except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inni kuntum min al-zalimin. I was from the wrongdoers. Now, he's not actually asking Allah directly for any, he's not asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything, but you can clearly see, although he said that he was from the wrongdoers, but he wasn't asking for immediate relief, because he realized, I was from the wrongdoing, and I understand why this has happened to me. Why? Inni kuntu min al-zalimin, because I was from the wrongdoers. So he's been afflicted by this immense tribulation, but what he has done at that time, he has realized the cause for it, which is his own wrongdoing. And that's why he was swallowed up by the whale. So that's rida. He had a level of rida. Yusuf, Yaqub alayhi salam, okay, when he lost Yusuf alayhi salam, when he lost Yusuf alayhi salam, he cried, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا يَصِفُونَ, مَا تَصِفُونَ. So, he sought Allah's aid. But notice how the way he didn't say, oh Allah, bring him back to me. Okay, for sabr, he said, I will have sabr. Wallahu al-musta'an, Allah's aid is sought. Musa alayhi salam, he's been exiled. Okay, and he's just poor and disheveled and he's hungry and weak. Rabbi inni lima anzalta min khayrin faqir, bima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. Oh Allah, whatever good you have for me, then I'm in need of it. Again, he's not begging Allah in the sense, although he's mulih in that sense, and we spoke about ilhah last week, if you remember, right? And so many of the other du'as, okay, whether it be the du'a of Adam alayhi salam, okay, ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. You know, he's not saying, oh Allah, take me back to paradise, but he's been sent down to earth. Khalas, this is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But look, we've wronged ourselves. And he realizes again the mistake that we wronged ourselves. If you don't forgive us, we will be from the losers. Okay, so again, you can make dua, plead to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and still be in a state of rida. Then you have other type of du'as, okay, which are worldly du'as, right? And again, worldly du'as that you make can indicate that you have rida and can possibly indicate you don't have rida. So for example, if you are in a state of financial difficulties and you beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove you from your state of poverty, you're begging Allah, oh Allah, take me away from this state of poverty. I can't deal with it anymore. Okay, so that's fine. You can do that. And that's not blameworthy. Right, but you can ask Allah to remove you from poverty, but with rida. Okay, and notice here, fixing a shoe strap. So remember that this is a question that some of you asked before, right? So how, if the Prophet ﷺ said that ask Allah, even if it means asking for fixing a shoe strap, right? Then surely that is an indication of lack of rida. No, the answer is no. Remember last week when we discussed the three different types, the three different approaches for dua. You have one group who make dua to Allah and they use Allah basically just as a wasila, a means for their goals. So they want X, Y, and Z, or they want X, and they realize the only way they can get X is by asking Allah. So they're using Allah as a means basically. But the other group, they're people who remember, they find that intimacy in their dua, that they actually find that the state that they're in of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be more beloved to them than the thing that they're asking for. We spoke about this last week, right? So you can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your shoe strap to be fixed, okay? But the reason why you're asking him for that is not because you genuinely really want your shoe strap to be fixed. It's because you just want to go to Allah for everything, because that's how close you are to Allah. And a lot of people don't see this about this hadith, because a common man would actually think, actually, why do I need to ask Allah to fix my shoe strap? I could just do it myself very quickly, isn't it? Yeah, most people will think like that. But no, but this person, no, he's asking Allah not because he actually wants his shoe strap to be fixed. It's because this is an opportunity for him to converse with Allah, right? So therefore, all of your du'as and conversations that you have, you can engage in so many types of du'a with Allah, but still be in a state of rida, right? And there are so many other types of du'as that you can make, like du'a for other people, right? And so don't think of dua in such a limited way and think that they're like rida is the antithesis to dua, or dua is the antithesis to rida, right? And then just remember here, it says, remember, making dua doesn't always mean a person lacks rida, right? Okay, just take the next question, inshallah. So how would you advise us? I think there were some other questions related to, let me just answer Zakaria's question. What about Zakaria asking for a son because he doesn't have one? This is from the worldly affairs. No. Was his dua also an emphasized form of asking, and never have I been in supplication to you, my Lord, unhappy? So here, yeah, so this is maybe a rare occasion. This is, if you think about it, if you were to, I mean, this was something I was, if you look, just gloss over the Quran, gloss over the Hadith, you don't find that many instances where prophets would ask for very particular things, right? But even if they did, okay, it's not a bad thing, right? But here, why is he asking for a son? Okay, why is he asking for a son? Is it because he feels incomplete by not having a son, right? Then if at that moment, if maybe by asking for a son, that could be a sign of a lack of rida, right? But if he's asking for a son because he wants, for example, to draw closer to Allah by having a son that will worship Allah, that will, you know, that will serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that reason, then that's different. That's wanting to increase and to excel in goodness. And that's not a sign of lack of rida. It's not a sign of a lack of rida. And that's what we would say of Zakaria. You know, Rabbi habli min you know, grant me from a righteous offspring. Okay, that's an indication that he wanted a child for the sake of righteousness. I hope that answers that question. Okay, going back up again. So how would you advise us as isolated individuals? Yeah, so just like a person asking for abundant wealth, I think you meant wealth, yeah, to spend it in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, and not as a sign of discontentment for their own personal state. Yeah. So how would you advise us as isolated individuals to seek out our own murabbis and teachers, especially when our families or those we are around under the authority are not exemplar for us spiritually? I mean, this is one of the challenges of life, you know, in this day and age, finding your own, personal teacher and murabbi that you can be close to. It's hard for a number of reasons due to the fact that, due to the nature of modern living, everything has, especially since COVID now, everything is moving over to online, and it's hard. It is hard. Ideally, you want to be close to someone physically, and that's how traditionally it was in the past. People would go to classes, people would go to institutions, masajid, and that's where they would go to learn and receive their tarbiyah. But the overwhelming number of masajid, sadly, in this country, simply do not offer that. And it was my dream when I was an imam that our masjid would be a place like that. Okay, and inshallah, if I ever become an imam again of another masjid, that would be my goal. That would be my goal. It wouldn't be just a place of praying. It would be a place of educating, nurturing, tarbiyah for people to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But whoever you find, I would advise that, if you find someone that can be that teacher and murabbi to you, then, do your utmost to benefit from them, whichever way possible. Would we say that these stations existed during the Prophet's time, but it was not as broken down as writing as this is? Yeah, of course, these stations clearly did exist in the times of the Prophets and the Anbiya. But like with all sciences and disciplines, they were recorded and organized just so that for people of latter times could understand. Like with fiqh, usul al-fiqh, right? The Sahaba didn't know Kitab al-Tahara, Kitab al-Salah, Nawaqid al-Wudu. They didn't know it like we know it now. Right, but that's, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's Allah's wisdom, right? He, the nation of Islam has gone through so many stages, So the early years, the years of prophethood, the generation of the companions, it all evolves and it changes the way we look at and study things. So. When someone is being physically abused, do we have rida with the fact that Allah has allowed it to happen? Yeah, so this is, a question that, well, this is something that quite earlier on during the series, I did mention and speak about, because especially when we were speaking about the rulings relating to rida, right? And when it comes to, we said that the overwhelming majority of scholars, didn't consider rida to be an obligation. They considered it to be recommended. And one of the reasons why is because it is not possible for most people to have rida, not in just because it's a high level, but because there are certain things that most people will struggle to deal with. So physical abuse. So for example, so physical abuse, right? There are two things here. Firstly, by the way, so a person can potentially have rida with physical abuse, but that doesn't mean, and listen to this carefully, that doesn't mean that the person accepts it and allows it to continue. No, they still have to go against it because someone is committing haram. And rida doesn't mean you allow someone to commit haram. You go against, right? You fight against the person who is physically abusing you, or whichever way abusing you, right? But it's still potential for a person to have rida with that. Okay, being they realize this is happening by the decree of Allah, but because it's wrong, it's something which is wrong, I must speak out against it. Not because I have lack of rida. But for most people, they won't. And I'll be frank, most people, they won't have that rida. They'll struggle with sabr, even with dealing with physical abuse like that. It's very hard. Okay, it's very, very hard. And that's why it's not an obligation. Allah doesn't expect that from you. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah doesn't burden a soul more than it can bear. Sometimes with tribulation, you tell yourself that you'll be content. Seek forgiveness and leave it to Allah to relieve you of this tribulation. But then you have anxiety and are constantly thinking about the issue despite everything you told yourself. How do you make your inner actions in congruence with your inner words? Yeah, I mean, this is, as the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ صَدْمَةِ الْأُولَى. You know the famous story about the woman who was wailing at the graveside of her husband, and the Prophet ﷺ told her, "Taqillah," and she said to him, "Wailak, woe to you. How do you know what I'm going for?" She didn't realize it was the Prophet ﷺ. So she went back after she realized who he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She said, "Ya Rasul, I didn't know it was you." And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "Innama sabru inda sadmatil ula," that patience is required at the first striking of the calamity. Okay, the first striking of the calamity. Meaning it's not just about telling yourself that, oh, look, I need to have sabr. And, telling yourself is one thing, but making it a reality is something else. Okay, making it a reality is something else. Now, that's the challenge. Okay, how do you make your inner thoughts fall in line with, or your inner thoughts fall in line with what you want? Oh, sorry. How do you make your inner words fall in line with your actual actions? Or how do you make, your actions fall in line with your inner words? That's what you have to aim for. Okay, it's one of those things that when you make the niyyah to do something, you need to have the willpower to reach that level, and obviously you need the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I think it's important that we realize that it's very easy talking about all of these things. Okay, and I think for many of us, when we speak about these topics, we're probably telling ourselves, yeah, it's very easy to say all of this, but in reality, it's probably way too difficult to reach these levels. But what we must realize that, they're not easy levels. Okay, the levels, especially the last few weeks that we've been speaking about, these are very, very high levels. But you just have to aim high. You need to aim high and tell yourself, ask Allah to assist you in dealing with these tribulations. So basically, not being upset at Allah for it occurring, despite it being detestable. So basically, not being upset at Allah for it occurring, yeah, despite it being detestable and something they need to repel. Yes, exactly, yeah, exactly. I have to make my leave now. Really don't want to miss this Q&A, so hoping there will be, the recording will be up. And just to let everyone know, inshallah, you'll be happy to know that I will be releasing all of these videos, inshallah. I'll be making them all available for people who want to watch all of them, inshallah. It's recommended to have rida with the process of the decree, but not the sin of the abuse being committed? Yes, that's right. Okay. Any other questions? If you benefited from this class, I would strongly advise you to think about signing up for the Mukhtasar Minhaj al Qasidin class, which will be starting in September, inshallah. That will be on Friday nights from 10 p.m., 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., inshallah. So the topics are going to be related to some of the things. We're not going to be looking at Rida and Sabr directly. We're looking at Suluk, wayfaring, and spirituality. And Mukhtasar Minhaj al Qasidin, it's a more accessible text and one that I think many of you will benefit from, inshallah. Will the future lessons be done using the client on the website, inshallah? I don't know. I mean, I'm still in two minds. Yeah, I'm still in two minds. Everything with online conferencing and webinars, due to COVID, you know, there's so many new bits of software that are coming out, updates and things like that. I think even before September, I think there'll be more changes. But I think this current setup, the way I've done it now, it's okay. I mean, it won't be in this room. I'll go to my old setup with the background behind me. And but we'll see. We'll see, inshallah. I think the annotating and the notes has been a lot easier for me using an iPad. So, is it wrong to call Allah by Ash-Shakur, like you ask Him because you've done something good and therefore deserve something? Hope that makes sense. Apologies. No, I understand what you mean. So, yeah. So one of the names of Allah is Ash-Shakur, the appreciative one, the one who appreciates. So that's absolutely fine, because you call upon by Ash-Shakur because you want Allah to appreciate your actions. And again, that could be done for different reasons. Okay, some reasons more noble than others. Like, for example, if you want Allah to appreciate your actions, not because you want something from Him, but because you want Him to be more pleased with you. It's like, for example, you know, you give a present to somebody, right? You give a present to your wife or to your husband, and you're giving it not because you want something in return. You're giving it because you really want them to appreciate it, right? And as a result, they will, you know, appreciate you more as an individual. And it's not because you want something from them directly. Okay, that's not a lowly thing, but you know, that's a quite lofty thing if you think about it, especially in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for a person to, you know, ask Allah that He's a shakur, look, you appreciate my good actions, so reward me for those good actions. Okay, again, that's fine. That's not a problem, but it's not like in the first instance. Do you see? Sorry, I missed that. Will this class be continuing in September? So, no, we weren't talking about that. So this is the final class for the other Madārij al Sālikīn. We'll be taking a break until September. Now, usually the Wednesday evenings are dedicated for my extended tafsir class. And again, just to be clear, I have two Quran classes. One, what I call the Quran study class. That's taught on Thursdays with Tawfiq Online. And we'll be continuing from Surah Al-Ma'idah. Then I have a project I started way back in 2012. That was to do the tafsir of the entire Quran, which would take about 3 decades to do. Okay, so we've done Juz' Amma, we've done most of Surah Al-Baqarah now, but that's a very detailed tafsir. It's not like the Quran study class where we cover a number of pages in a lesson. In the detailed tafsir class, we cover maybe 2 ayahs a lesson. Now, I used to do that on Wednesdays in a masjid, but due to COVID-19, I haven't been going to a masjid, obviously. The masajid aren't open, so that's why we were having this class. Now, by September, to be honest, I don't think the masajid will be open to allow classes. So I'm just waiting to see what the situation will be. But most likely, even if the masajid don't open up for durus, I will continue the tafsir class, but I will put it online. Okay, I'll put it online. I mean, I'll live stream it. Okay, I'll live stream it. So people can tune in on Wednesday evenings, and so they can join that, inshallah. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, if there was another day in the week, I would have dedicated Madārij al Sālikīn. So I've really enjoyed teaching this text, and I felt as though a lot of people benefited from it as well. So I wish that there's another way that we can continue going through this, inshallah. But there's only so much I can do. All my other evenings in the weekdays are packed out. But Allah knows what will happen in the future. Maybe there'll be a way that we can continue. I mean, Zoom for the closed classes still seems a very good option, but obviously this open class, a few problems. Yeah, I mean, for our closed classes, we never had. Anyway, we'll see, inshallah. Tamyiz means discernment, meaning the ability to sort of distinguish between, what you think is good and what is bad for you, right? Where will you be starting from the online for the detailed tafsir? Surah Baqarah verse, it's been so long now, verse 200 and something, 250 something, I think. Would you please share your Venom diagram on Telegram, please? Venom. Yeah, inshallah. Diagram, yeah. I'll share that, inshallah. Okay, inshallah. I think we will stop there, inshallah. It's been a pleasure teaching all of you, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts this effort of ours, that He counts it towards our scale of good deeds, that He makes us from ar-radin, from those who have rida, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eternally pleased with all of us. Ameen ya Rabb. وجزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.